Okay, in chapter 3, we are going to continue with what we were talking about in chapter 1. In chapter 1, we had a number system, and at this particular point right here, we had a decimal point. I can't write very well. And to the left of the decimal point are whole numbers. And we had units, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions, and on and on. Chapter 3 is going to focus on the values to the right of the decimal point. The decimal point represents the word and then instead of beginning with units as we did to the left of the decimal point, we're going to start with tenths. And tenth is going to be T-E-N, and it's going to end with T-H-S. Tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. 10,000ths and 100,000ths, millions, 10 millionths, and 100 millionths. All to the right, all of those words are ending with THS. Okay, so if we were to read this particular number right here, 575 and 75 hundredths. Okay, the reason I would read it that way is because the 75 is in the hundredths location. So 575 to the left, units, tens, and hundreds, 575 and 75 hundredths. If I had another value up here, I would read 575 and 756 thousandths rather, 756 thousandths. Let's go ahead and look at some conversions that we can use in this particular chapter. Let's see. If we were to convert decimals to fractions, for example, you might have 0.7. That would read 7 tenths. Because 7 is in the tenths location on the number system. If I had 0.0002, I would read that as tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and 10,000ths. So that would equal 2 over 10,000. And I would read it 2 10,000ths with a THS on the end of it. If I had 17.015, I would read that as 17 and tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So it'd be 15 over 1,000. 17 and 15 thousandths. Okay, now if I were to convert fractions to decimals, let's go the opposite direction. First, I would divide numerator by the denominator. For example, if I had 5/8, I would enter into the calculator 5 divided sign by 8, and that would equal a decimal value of 0.625, which would read as 625 thousandths. If I entered 9 tenths into the calculator, 9 divided by 10, it would equal 0.9, otherwise known as 9 tenths. If I entered 91 over 1,000 by putting in 91 divided by 1,000, the decimal value would be 0.091. The 91, especially the 1, being in the thousandths location. If I had a whole number with a fraction like 6 3/5, that would equal the whole number of 6 And then the fractional amount I would enter into the calculator, 3 divided by 5, which equals 0.6. So that reads as 6 and 6/10, or 6.6. Okay, as far as rounding is concerned, I would have 3 steps. Step A is to identify digit.
It's pretty much in all of these are.
Okay, step B would be if digit to the right of identified digit is great. 5 is 5 or greater. Round the identified digit up. And then the third step is to leave off remaining digits. When finishing the rounding. Okay, for example, we're going to round this first one to the nearest 10th. Okay, so step A is to identify the specific digit. Let's say that we've got 1.279. Okay, the identified digit is 2 because that's in the 10th location. So I mark that as a red value. Okay, then in step B is we're going to look one step to the right of the 10th location. If it's 5 or greater, we're going to round the 10th location up to the next higher number. 7 is greater than 5, so we're going to make that 1.3. And then step C is we're going to leave off any additional values, and that's going to read as 1 3/10. Okay, if we were rounding to the nearest hundredth, and the value that we are rounding is 25.27835. We're going to look for the value that's in the hundredths location. The value that's in the hundredths location is the 7. 2 is in the tenths location, and 7 is in the hundredths location. So we're going to identify the digit as 7. And we're going to look one place to the right of the identified digit for step B. And if it's 5 or greater, we're going to round the identified digit up to the next higher number, which is 8. So that would read 25.28. So that's 25 and 28 hundredths. And then we just leave off any remaining digits. Okay, let's do one more. Let's round this one to the nearest thousandth. Okay, let's use a value of 135 and 25348, which technically written like that, 2 is in the tenths location, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths. That would read 135 and 25,348 100,000ths. Okay, we're going to round it to the nearest thousandth by doing that. That means the 3 is in the thousandths location. We're going to look one place to the right of the thousandths location, which is a 4. It's not 5 or greater, so we're going to leave the value is 135 and 253 thousandths, and we're not going to include any of the original additional digits. It's 135 and 253 thousandths. Okay, that looks like all that I have for Chapter 3. Chapter 1 focused specifically on the numbers to the left of the decimal point, and Chapter 3 focused on to the values to the right of the decimal point. This concludes Chapter 3.